Okay, so you know how we always talk about the usual ways to buy stuff in SAP, like with purchase orders?
Mm.
Well, you asked about some of the more specialized types of procurement, right? Where SAP Cloud handles things a little differently.
Yeah, beyond your standard PO. So we're going to take a look at two of those today.
Two really interesting examples, I think. Consignment and then stock transport orders.
Hmm.
And I think the goal is to understand, like, not just how these processes work,
Hmm.
but also why would a company choose to use them?
Exactly. When do they make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When are they the best tool for the job?
Hmm. These aren't your typical everyday procurement methods,
Right.
but they have very specific and pretty powerful advantages.
Right.
Um, so why don't we start with consignment? Like at its core, what's the fundamental idea here?
Okay. So imagine this, right?
Okay.
A supplier, they deliver materials to you, to
Mm.
your site.
Right.
And they might even just sit in your warehouse, like right there.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't actually own them yet. Ownership stays with the supplier
Mm-hmm.
until you actually take those materials and use them. And it's only then that the payment is triggered.
That's it. The supplier keeps the ownership,
Right.
which can be a huge, improvement to your cash flow.
Right. Especially if it's something very expensive.
Exactly. Like if it's high value or maybe it's something that moves slowly,
You don't need it right away.
you're only paying when you actually use that material to make something or to sell it.
Right.
So you're not putting a big chunk of money up front
Right. Yeah.
and you're not taking on as much risk with your inventory.
Right. Because what if you never end up needing it
Right.
and then it's just sitting there? Right.
Exactly. And so the way this whole process starts is by setting up what's called a consignment info record.
Okay. And this is like what? This is like the basic data, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for this specific supplier, let's say their number is 123000001,
Okay.
providing a particular material, RM128, to your purchasing organization, 1210 and Plant 1210, under purchasing group 001.
Okay.
You're setting up this agreement that this is going to be a consignment arrangement.
Got it.
Right. And this record, it actually captures all the details, the important commercial and logistical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the delivery time that you'd expect, maybe 5 days,
Okay.
or a delivery tolerance that you're willing to accept, like 10% plus or minus,
Mm-hmm.
standard order quantity if there's the typical amount that you need,
Right.
the unit of measure like PC for piece,
Okay.
and of course the price like 165 per piece.
Okay.
This also includes any tax codes that are relevant
Right.
and the time period that this agreement is valid for.
Okay. So then what happens?
So then you go ahead and create a purchase order.
Okay.
But it's special, right?
Okay. So it's not a normal PO.
Right. You're going to use item category K,
Mm-hmm.
and the system, it knows that this means it's a consignment PO.
Mm-hmm. So the system's going to handle it differently.
That's right. And when the goods actually show up, you post a goods receipt like you normally would.
Okay.
But here's the thing. When you look at your stock overview, these materials that came in on consignment, they're separate.
Oh,
They show up in a special section called vendor consignment.
okay.
So they're physically there in your warehouse,
Right.
but they're not considered part of your own, valued stock yet
Interesting.
because you don't own them yet.
Okay.
So now let's say you actually need to use these materials.
Okay.
So what you do is you do what's called a transfer posting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an app for that. It's called Transfer Stock in Plant.
Okay.
And you basically say, okay, I'm taking it from supplier consignment
Right.
and I'm moving this quantity over to, my regular stock.
Into my inventory.
Exactly. Into unrestricted used stock.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell the system who the supplier is and how much you're taking.
Got it. So that's when we actually take ownership.
Exactly. That's the trigger.
Okay.
That's when you're basically saying, okay, we're consuming these items now.
Okay.
And that's what triggers the payment process.
Okay. Got it.
So then the next step would be to do the invoice receipt for this consignment withdrawal.
Okay.
And this isn't a typical invoice for goods that you just received, remember?
Right.
It's more like you're settling up
Okay.
your liability for what you've already used from that consignment stock.
Got it.
So to do that, you're going to use another app. It's called Create Logistics Consignment and Pipeline Settlement,
Okay.
or MRKON for short.
MRKO. Okay.
And this is the tool you use to settle all those consignment liabilities.
Got it.
And so in the app, you would select your company code,
Okay.
the supplier,
Yeah.
the plant.
Mhm.
And then it's important to select consignment
Mhm.
and withdrawals not settled.
So it knows what it's looking for.
Right. It's telling the system, okay, find all the materials that we've taken out of consignment that we haven't paid for yet.
Right.
So you run that, and it creates a settlement document.
Okay.
And then you can actually find that document using the supplier invoice list app.
Okay.
You just filter by output type.
Okay.
Consignment settlement.
Okay, so that's consignment. So it's really like about external ownership, but the stuff's on your site and then you pay upon use.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to stock transport orders. Now, this is all about moving goods within your own organization, right?
That's right. So think of it like moving materials between your different plants or your different warehouses.
Right, got it.
The material that we're looking at, it obviously mentions a really quick one-step process for when things are really close by.
Okay.
But if you want something more formal, and tracked,
right,
especially if it's going a longer distance,
okay,
you'd use a stock transport order.
Okay, so basically plant A needs something from plant B, right?
Exactly. And they're both within the same company.
Right. Got it.
So the first step is to create this stock transport order.
Okay.
And you use the Create Purchase Order Advanced app for that.
Okay.
But the important thing here is to choose the right order type.
Okay.
Which is UB.
UB. Okay.
That's the one that tells SAP, hey, this is an internal stock transfer.
Got it. Like a request.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then you'd fill in all the details.
Okay.
Like which plant is supplying the material, maybe plant 1020.
Okay.
And which plant is receiving it, like plant 1010. The material number.
Okay.
Let's say it's TG11.
TG11.
How much they need.
Right.
When they need it by.
Right.
And where they want it delivered, like storage location 101A.
Okay, so then what happens?
Okay, so then the supplying plant, they have to actually ship the stuff, right?
Right.
So they post what's called a goods issue.
Okay.
And they do that using the Post Goods Movement app. And there's a specific movement type you use for this. It's 351.
351, okay.
And what that does is it tells SAP, these goods are leaving this plant for a stock transport order.
Okay.
So it's basically tracking the change in ownership and location.
Got it.
So they'll put in the stock transport order number, the quantity, and the storage location it's coming from.
Okay, so maybe like 102A, if that's where it's at.
Exactly. Yeah. So then after that goods issue is posted, the stock it's in transit, right?
Oh, okay, so it's on the way.
Yeah, it's on its way.
But we don't know exactly what it is.
Well, you can actually see that it's in transit.
Okay.
If you use the stock single material app.
Okay.
So you just enter the material number.
Okay.
And it'll show you that some quantity has left the supplying plant.
Right.
But it hasn't arrived at the receiving plant yet.
Right. It's somewhere in between.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then finally, when the shipment actually gets there,
okay,
the receiving plant, they have to post a goods receipt against that original stock transport order. And they use the post goods receipt for purchasing document app for that.
Okay.
And they select the PO and say where it's being received.
Like 101A in our example.
Exactly. And then, boom.
The stock's there.
It's officially part of the receiving plant's inventory.
Okay, great. So let's recap, right? Consignment is for when you have a supplier who's basically managing the stock at your site. And you only pay when you use it, so you can optimize your cash flow and reduce your risk.
Exactly.
And then stock transport orders, they're all about streamlining how goods move within your own company.
Right.
So you have better visibility into your inventory.
Yep.
And you can maybe even optimize how production happens across your different locations.
Absolutely.
So basically, understanding how to use these special procurement types in SAP Cloud can give you some really powerful tools to solve some very specific challenges, right? And it can have a big impact on both your inventory and your financials.
It really makes you think, like what other unique needs are out there in different businesses that could be addressed using these kinds of special SAP functionalities.
Right.
Maybe there are even more ways that we could optimize how goods move around that we haven't even thought of yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Thanks for walking us through that.
Of course. Happy to help.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you next time.